smash the like. We're actually going to jump into the main discussion for tonight. Like you saw in the thumbnail, you know, it sounds kind of crazy, right? Jasmy getting involved with the whole thing and maybe like ride shares. Now, I'm not saying that Jasmy does specifically like, they're the new Uber. It's the tech that's involved in regards to all this to solve an actual problem that exists in Japan, Southeast Asia. Um, and if anything, what will happen with these areas of the world? And then you could say pretty much like, would we take it over here? And my answer is yes. And I'm going to do a full breakdown, also get some comments from Robb to why we believe that the answer is yes. It's not just like, hey, yes, because Jasmy and we're invested in Jasmy. No, no, no. There's been some recent developments, some recent things posted in Japan that you want to pay attention to. If Jasmy's your thing, I'm telling you flat out, you're not going to be disappointed with this particular segment. So let's go ahead and get into the first part of it. We want to thank Mr. Dennis Chong in regards to this report. Here it is. And like you're about to see right here in this report, actually, I'm going to come full screen, right? As much as you guys love looking at my mug and Robb's, check out the material, right? All right. So let's pull this up. And if you see Dennis in the chat, thank him for it, because this is what I used to call sideline reporting, right? So it comes from Chain Analysis. I think that's a typo, or I'm not pronouncing it right, but that's okay. This is a 2023 report, and your key takeaway should be why this matters. Guys, it's mass adoption, right? We want to see actual data to support the whole notion of mass adoption. Now, this came from October 2023, but look what it mentions. In this 2023 Geography of Cryptocurrency report, says everything you need to know about regional trends in crypto adoption. You know where we're going with this. We're looking at Japan. We're looking at Asia, right? That's obviously a continent, right? You guys know this stuff. I'm going to fast forward down to this part. And basically, it's like this. My bad. I'm going to go down to this part, actually. So it talks about this adoption index. And, when I got more into this, I said to myself, well, what about Asia specifically? Well, this index, country regions and so on, India has been killing it. United States is obviously up there. But when I went through the part of Japan, I was like, do they have a share of the whole thing of Eastern Asia country transactions volume by transfer size versus the global average conglomerate? And if so, how well does it look? How great does it look? Well, it looks pretty good, actually. And if anything, what's also interesting is to see, like I mentioned in the last live video and on the chopped up recorded, it's Hong Kong, Japan, and how they're strategically putting themselves into the whole thing. So Hong Kong represents 46.8% of what you see here by transfer size versus global average. And then you have Japan part of that. And for both of them to work with each other, I think is big. You also see here that they have this ranking of like large institutional, right, which is greater than 10 million, right? But it says this, and I think we should mention this: Hong Kong sees a larger share of transaction volume coming in large institutional transactions, 10 million or more compared to other countries, notably mainland China, other end of the spectrum, South Korea, right? I'll pull up a little bit more about this. It says overall, Japan appears to be the Eastern Asia country whose retail versus institutional transaction breakdown is the most in line with global averages. Pulling up a little bit more info. And this part, Japan closely follows global markets, with most actively split close to evenly between centralized exchanges and various types of DeFi protocols. Compares it, for instance, with South Korea. So South Korea, on the other hand, sees about 68.9% of transaction volume associated with centralized exchanges. Gives some of the reasons about it, some of the collapse about Terra Luna. But this part on the bottom, because I think we should pay attention to Hong Kong. Hong Kong shows a unique breakdown in the most used crypto platform types, though these numbers should be taken with a grain of salt given the anecdotal evidence that much crypto activity in both countries takes place through OTC, through informal. But your takeaway should be this: that announcement, I'll come back in the frame, the announcement that recently happened in regards to Hong Kong some of this policy address, and how they're fully embracing what? Web3, AI, and investing heavily into Japan and turbocharging startups. Again, all the things that you saw outlined from Shinzo Abe, that was the inception of how all that all came about in 2015 and where we're at now. Um, so again, I know you kind of looked a little bit into this yourself. Did anything kind of catch your eye before you move forward, Rob?
Well, what really just kind of jumped out at me is that over on my channel, we've been talking about this for the better part of a year. Um, Hong Kong, China, and Japan have all been saying for well over a year now that they planned on jumping into Web3 with both feet. They planned on making a big splash, right? Um, IoT is just another part of that, right? So this doesn't come as any kind of surprise for those of us that have kind of been following Jasmy and what's happening out east. And again, for the better part of a year, I've been saying that I think in this bull run coming up, a lot more money is going to be coming into crypto and digital assets from the east, from Asia, than people are anticipating. I think it's sorely underestimated because not only in terms of money coming into the market, but also in terms of development. I mean, we just watched that announcement the other night, right, where they talked about bringing in initiatives for companies to actually launch in Japan as well, right? These startup companies. So it's not just money coming into the market that's being underestimated. It's also their willingness to embrace these companies and help them launch. Right? It's really going to be more of an epicenter, in my opinion, to Web3 as a whole. And again, everyone's so hyper focused on the money coming into crypto and digital assets from these Bitcoin ETFs from the United States that everyone's just kind of blinders to what's going on in the East right now.
You brought up a great point. I think that's exactly what's going on in regards to the blinders. Ironically, in the outline, we mentioned the whole thing about blinders. Okay, there's this thing about blind spots. Kind of funny in regards to the whole thing of what we're going to talk about with Uber, Lyft, and so on. So my thing is, yes, it's like recognizing a whole different sector. When we get to the H bar coverage of the night, we're going to talk about like the whole thing on ISO 222. And, when it comes to Ripple, XRP, Stellar XLM, it's like everybody's looked at upon those two is like they're going to lead the charge when it comes to cross border payments. They're going to lead the charge in regards to this ISO revolution. We understand the full mandate comes out late November 2025. And that's what kind of sets those coins and tokens apart from others. It's like, wow, this technology with ISO. But what about the technology that exists, as you mentioned, in the Far East with Japan and so on? If we're excited, the point I'm trying to make here is if we're excited about ISO 222, which a lot of us are, and if you're new to this, maybe you haven't heard of it, and it's okay. And if I'm not looking at the camera, it's because I'm trying to look at Rob to have a conversation. So again, a disclaimer for anybody just tuning in. So if I'm excited about ISO 222, I have got to be excited about this thing that Taro Kono introduced to Japan and bring it to the world, which is called DFFT, Data Free Flow with Trust. If ISO is the rail that we all want to get on for this messaging standard to be used, and it's so much more adequate than Swift and that old MT messaging system, what about Jasmy being fully compliant with the whole idea of what? Data free flow with trust. It's like it's already there. And now they're scaling up while the rest of the world is just trying to play catch up. And so what we want to do is we want to bring it into the next part of what we have. And I have to give a shout out to our brother Neo X Tricks. If you see Neo in the chat, you got to give him mad props. This guy has been killing it. We love Neo. He is a well respected person that's part of the space of Jasmy, and he brings it every day. He absolutely brings it every day. I want to show you guys this. This was a recent post, roughly about an hour or two before the show, and Neo, he wants to also give us like the old, the new, and so on. But this is new, and I think you guys want to see this, and I think you guys will appreciate it. So look at this. He says Jasmy conducted an experiment on autonomous vehicles, exemplified by the quote Kita Hero Ride demonstration in Kita Hiroshima, Hokkaido. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The focus was on secure management of personal data, such as user residences, enabling a worry-free use of autonomous vehicles through Jasmy's platform rather than local governments. Now, hear me out on this. All right. I have some other things you guys know me, I take more of the deeper dive. But rather than local governments, this approach opens up possibilities to enhance comfort, such as automatically issuing coupons when users visit stores in the futures. What about also giving them a better experience in general, like on something like Uber or a Lyft, right? Depending on what you use. I decided to get more into this, and if anything, before I did, I said to myself, Jasmy, autonomous vehicles. We understand the whole thing of what they're connected to when it comes to the Internet of Things, but is there really something solid here in regards to this, and how can Jasmy benefit from it? The answer is yes. So Jasmy did conduct this experiment with autonomous vehicles. They exemplified the whole thing of a Kita Hero Ride. The person that you saw in the article is Mr. Hagawara-san, right? He did demonstrate some of this. There's an article about it. Also features Kazumasa Sato. We'll get into that in a bit. But this whole focus on secure management of personal data, I want you guys to think about this for a second, is significant in so many ways when it comes to Jasmy. I want to break down at least 3 key things before we move on in regards to this that you should pay attention to. Number 1, there is a sense of focus on data privacy. So for one, being able to address the concern of secure personal data management, Jasmy's platform, in regards to what you just saw from Hargawara, could address a major hurdle in the public adoption of autonomous vehicles. I'm telling you flat out, when we get to the whole part of breaking down the ways that Jasmy will benefit ride shares, it's never financial advice, but don't try to FOMO in too much. People might be hesitant to use the vehicles if they worry about the personal data being collected and used by local governments or other entities. It's recognizing that Jasmy does work with the government. At the same time, they have that layer of protection with their AI governance to separate what needs to be separated. This other second thing I want to get into, the potential for additional services. This experiment in itself, and why there's a highlight in the media for Japan and even NeoXTrix bringing it to us. The experiment suggests that Jasmy's platform could be used to provide additional services beyond just secure data management. I'm going to have a breakdown with you in a bit for that, and I also want to hear Robb's take. The example of automatically issuing coupons, for instance, highlights the potential for personalized and convenient experiences without the use of, or within, I should say, autonomous vehicles. And this third key thing I want to get into. We all want to see mass adoption, right? That's why we're here. But there will be this whole thing of broader applicability. Hear me out on this. The success of this specific experiment that was highlighted in recent news, especially in Japan, could pave the way for Jasmy's platform to be used in other applications way beyond the whole thing of autonomous vehicles. Secure data management and personalized services are valued in various sectors. They are. And it's going to potentially increase Jasmy's reach and impact. It'll also give Jasmy a lot of credibility because it's like this is a new innovative thing tied in with AI that will turbocharge industries that specialize in customer experiences. This is where I'm going to go with the whole thing with Uber, and this is where I'm going to go with the whole thing with Lyft and anything that has something to do with this. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share this part, and I definitely want to get Robb's take on this one. And we're just going to pull this up as well. So on this particular one, you have, for instance, this, and this is also from NeoXTrix. Let's pull this up as well. And here it is. He says, 2 previous posts are a summary of key moments from interviews with Kazumasa Sato, who's, Jasmy CEO, and Takashi Hagawara is a typo, director and supervisor of software development. Here's the article. Let's take you to the article. Because in this, there is a specific new interview. Were you aware of this interview? When did it take place? It took place not that long ago, on February 22nd of 2024. On the highlights, you'll see what says blockchain AI interview. There is Hagawara-san. And in this is beautiful. I'm going to give you a little brief outline here in a second. So we know about Jasmy and data democratization, and I'm going to full screen this just to put more emphasis on this real quick. It says specifically, this first part, introduce the unique technology that enables data democratization. In the second part, we asked Kazumasa Sato, the company's representative director and president, and Takashi Hagawara, director and head software development, about the initiatives and services using this industry. And look at this part. I have a whole breakdown about this. It's about this technology called Serendipity. What kind of business or initiatives are you currently undertaking using blockchain tech? I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm going to tell you something. He's going to refer to an initiative between Nova Serum, Biomedica Solutions. He's going to get down into this whole thing of the future that's kept in mind. But your key takeaway is going to be serendipity. And what is so important in regards to this for ride shares. So with that said, I don't want to hog all the highlight tonight because you are the special guest and I would want to make you feel included, my friend. I know you don't want me to put you on the spot and stuff. I respect that. But I can't be oblivious to the notion that you fully know about this thing called Uber and this thing called obviously Lyft and some of the other ones out there. You have got to, respect that it has been game changer. I mean, I remember many years ago, I got a job working as a cab driver, and I didn't go with it. I got a better offer at another job later on. This is before the whole college thing, but it's just like I'm looking at taxis all over the place. Like they got swallowed up by this whole thing of ride shares and so on. From your experience, what you gathered, what do you think Jasmy could do in regards to autonomous vehicles and changing the game with AI and all this with the whole thing of data protection and providing a better experience for, I guess you could say, the riders on these rideshare platforms?
Well, I think that we're not just talking about at the end of the day the riders, but we're also talking about the drivers too, right? With the AI integration, from my understanding of it, is it helps provide, in my opinion, a better, like you were saying, experience. Imagine hopping. I hear horror stories. I run a bar. You know that, right? I run a bar on weekends. I hear horror stories
I don't
all
know
the.
that. I just now knew that. Anyway,
Oh, I thought I told you that.
no, it's okay.
Yeah, so I manage a nightclub on weekends, right? And I hear horror stories about taxi drivers, about the wrong Uber driver getting in the wrong Uber, and it's a nightmare. You even see the videos, you see shorts sometimes and stuff like that. People getting in and canceling their freaking ride while they're in the Uber, things like that, right? But I digress. Basically, we're talking about here is lining up your interests, like the AI being able to line up your interests with you as a person, right? To that of the driver that's going to be picking you up, right? And so we're not talking about just a great experience for the customer, but also for the person that is the Uber driver, because they don't want to deal with a moron any more than anybody else does, right?
Right. Yeah.
And to have, in my opinion, this reaches far beyond just things like Uber at the end of the day, right? We could be talking about pretty much any aspect of society, whether you're talking about restaurants, shopping centers, stores, and people's experiences, what type of places you like to go, versus what a demographic is or what a clientele target is for, and you get matched up with this stuff. And I think it's the way that we're moving as a society, and it's just only going to become more and more prevalent in your everyday life. You're not even going to realize you're using this stuff, right? That's kind of my take on it. I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, that's a great way of having a take on it. Like we cover other things like quant. I think you also mentioned you cover quant, and the way I look at it is like, not realizing what is tied to in the background. I look at like Jasmy, what's tied to, even if it's not direct partnerships, it's what's running in the background. In this case with AI and the example you mentioned in regards to not just the rider, is the driver. I want to give you guys an example of what we're talking about here for a second. So I'm gonna pull this back up, and if you want to follow along for yourself at home or whatever you're doing, Sometimes I get requests for the links. So basically speak, I'm gonna drop this down in the chat for you guys. You can first, if you're driving down the road, obviously don't do this. It's open-dx-lab.itoki.jp. Now maybe that's not going to work so well driving down the road, but here it is in the chat for you guys here tuned in tonight. I just dropped it in. And let's get into this for a second. It says what kind of development you have in the future, right? Obviously, Hagawara and also Sato-san are, interviewed here. So Mr. Sato says web advertisements and recommendation functions that encourage purchasing behavior are analyzed, displayed based on search engine keywords. This method is called collaborative filtering. It searches for users with similar tastes. Again, back to what Rob just talked about. It makes recommendations in the form of, quote, people who buy this also buy this. However, since people have different tastes, they may actually want something different. Where the challenge is this whole thing called serendipity. I'm telling you flat out, I decided to go the extra mile and look and research more into serendipity. But before we get into that, I do want to finish this off with this. Sato says, for example, a person who listens to classical music every day may want to listen to pop music once in a while. However, the current centralized system is not possible to use one ID for different purposes. Think about what Jasmy provides to the mix. However, if you use a personal data locker, which is Jasmy's premier, most popular utility function, you can use it for different purposes. So you can pass only the data that the user wants to pass. Furthermore, by combining Edge AI, how many times did we see that mentioned last year? Combining Edge AI, it becomes possible to perform more detailed analysis and recommendations. There's obviously Sato-san. And, this part, blockchain tech also expands the work styles. We know about all this stuff in regards to Jasmy and its functions, but I wanted to bring you into this. Here's the quick gist of serendipity and why it's important, just in case you don't know what it is. I'll come into full screen on this one. This is good stuff. It says specifically that serendipity is the concept once reserved for for chance encounters. Think about chance encounters. Back to what Rob said. You just got out of Rob's club. Maybe you're a drunk or something like that. No offense. You hop into this whole vehicle. The guy that's in the vehicle may be like heavy into metal. You're not in the metal, you're into classical music. Maybe that's going to be a problem. But look at this. Serendipity finds new life in AI's ability to predict and create delightful surprises. As AI deciphers the intricate threads of user preferences and behaviors, it unveils a canvas of tailored content suggestions. I will come out of frame for this for a second. I will get Rob's take for a second. And why I want to point this out is this. Tailored suggestions. When I think everybody here, uses Google in some form, even if you're against it. Our phones are listening to us constantly to the point where it's intrusive. It's beyond ridiculous. You will see an example in the research about serendipity. It talks about, for instance, a lady who has a pet. She gets tired of being absolutely bombarded with ads about dog food. It's like, it is kind of like, apples and oranges and so on. How do you create something that is going to tailor the right amount of data to the person that needs it? And then from there, realize that they need it. And then from there, take it out and be done with it instead of just bombarding people with ads, marketing, you name it, about purchases they already made or experiences that they already experienced. So my thing is this, Rob. When I see things like this and Jasmy being tied into this and everything we saw from the outline about Hong Kong, aren't we that much more bullish about the future for Jasmy?
We're not bullish enough. We're never bullish enough. I think that you're absolutely right, and it's not just the ability to tailor what you're looking for and what your interests are, but also the ability, its ability to know when to stop as well, right? You having that option so that you're not bombarded and stuff like that, right? Which is also key because, like you said, we're constantly bombarded with our phones. I have a Google phone, right? I can't even talk around it without it starting to take a command from me, for crying out loud. Sometimes a video, you could be talking in the speaker and it'll start, it'll think you're talking to my phone. It's insane. Like you said, to the point where it's disruptive.
It's too disruptive. And so this whole thing that I want to bring up to you guys in regards to serendipity, I'm gonna pull this up. I think this is game changer. So I'm gonna share this, and to see Jasmy tied into even study groups. I mean, not directly, but indirectly, right? I just decided to get more into this whole thing of serendipity. So I want to point this out. This is from kdd.org. I'm not going to drop in the link because that's really easy to follow. So just K is in kid, D is in data, D is in data.org, kdd.org. Look what's mentioned here as well. You know how we talk about deep dive research? These guys specialize in just that research. So they are an association for computing and machinery special interest group of knowledge discovery and data mining. Look at their mission: to provide a premier forum for advancement, education, adoption, science of knowledge discovery, and data mining of all types of data stored in computers and networks of computers. What do? They promote basic research, development, in KDD, adoption of standards. You know how many times I talk about standards, especially when it comes to quant and ISO 222. ISO TC 307 is a quant network standard, right? But in the market, in terms of terminology, evaluation, methodology, and interdisciplinary education among KDD researchers, practitioners, and users. Here's what people get from them. They provide a membership, for instance. I'm not promoting, you guys do this, but it includes the chance to participate in shaping data mining, knowledge discovery, field through research meetings. They have innovation and service awards. This is no like low key fly by night outfit. Like they specialize in data research by analyzing just that data. Why am I pointing this out to you? I'm gonna show you exactly why I'm pointing this out to you. So remember how Robb was mentioning about the whole thing about, what was it? I don't know if it was blind spots or being, you mentioned something about blind earlier. I forgot what it was, but anyway, my point is, um, it's this. And they wrote this whole report about this, and to see the point I'm trying to make to you guys tonight is to see Jasmy in the news talk about this stuff. This is why you want to pay attention to this. So I'm going to come out of the frame, put some emphasis on this instead of our mugs, and you're going to see some things that really open your eyes. I'm telling you flat out, I think it will. I would make it a little bit bigger, but then it's just going to funky. It's going to mess up the whole outline. But look at this for a second. It says blind spots in AI, the role of serendipity and equity in algorithm-based decision making. Isn't that what Jasmy's currently doing in regards to this interview? Remember serendipity? Remember Sato-san talking about this? Yes. Yep. I'm right with you. So in this abstract, they talk about DSS. I'm going to give you a heads up on what DSS is. It's decision support systems. Come on, guys. Think about this for a second. Decision support systems. If you're brand new to the whole thing of Jasmy, and you're like, I don't know what Jasmy is, I need to find out what the heck this thing is, what they're tied into. You are tuned into a great program tonight. Myself, Rob, this whole community, because we want to know something. It's what they are tied into. If you were excited or you wished that you could, how about this? You wished you could go in a time machine back in the day and invest in the likes of Google, because it became like a multi-billion dollar, if not maybe $1 trillion company. It's crazy. And recognize how huge that would have been to invest early in Web 1 and the likes of Google instead of investing in Ask Jeeves or pets.com and stuff like that. I honestly think that Jasmy's your second chance. So when we talk about like quant is your second chance at BTC at $100, back in 2013, I think you do need to seriously reconsider, or consider, I should say, Jasmy being a disruptor to centralized data, because it truly is. And we're going to get into why that is specifically. It's a decentralized data marketplace and then some. So let's full screen this. Take a look at this for a second. Decision support systems, DSS, are used more and more to offer right information at the right time. Jasmy wants to get all over that like a fat kid on cake, right? Serendipity has been proposed to ensure that the experience is broad and engaging. However, only designing for serendipity might not be enough to avoid historical discrimination affecting your DSS. For this reason, we argue to include equity when designing for serendipity. Getting more into this for a second, so let me just show you another tad bit. I'll take you to this next particular slide because this would take 5 hours for me to get into. I don't want to do that. This part about artificial intelligence, I want you guys to see this. It says, basically speaking, they have this open challenge related to subjects presented in this work, but it's applicable more generally in the discourse of ethical artificial intelligence. Remember how Jasmy feels as though that people's data and making, the whole case of data democratization, it needs to be ethical. Recent works all explicitly point out that there is a need for domain appropriate ethical tools. What is Jasmy literally creating? Ethical tools. Have you looked into DPIN? Check out our deep dive in regards to DPIN, Junction, and what HAR is doing with that. So look at this for a second. From experience as social scientists involved in the design, many of these systems they believe creates challenges. Look at this. Mentions this whole thing of these experiences. Remember back the whole thing of tailored experiences. Let me pull up another thing real quick. I'm going to go up to the top part real quick. My bad. Yeah, let's go down to this. It says this is the next part. I'm sorry. It says basically being able to develop and provide more specific concrete tools to implement the principles of serendipity and equity. We hope that the arguments in this paper, because this is a paper of research, highlight or demonstrate the importance of notions such as serendipity, the equity in design, algorithmic-based decision-making systems, and invite scholars for crying out loud, and practitioners from other domains to work collectively towards putting these principles into practice. Now, I will come out of the frame on this and get your take on this. That gentleman, Mr. Chan from Hong Kong, what did he mention in regards to his address? He put a lot of emphasis on research and development, a lot of emphasis on universities, research and all this stuff about this whole thing of going gangbusters, investing into Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, the whole thing tied to creating new Web3 experiences tailored towards the needs of decentralized data. How many times did he mention data? It was a 2 hour and 50-minute thing. I listened to the whole thing. My God, I'm going crazy with the whole thing. But I did try to give everybody about roughly 10 to 15 minutes of that. I'm telling you, everything that's been outlined, you go back into it, Rob, and it's just like that is going on as we speak. I think it's crazy. I think it's more than. Go ahead. I want to hear what you got to say about this.
Oh, sorry. I was actually just kind of agreeing with you there, but there's something else that I was kind of goes parallel with this. What you're talking about a little bit.
By all means, share away.
I've been doing a lot of research into it lately and just kind of getting my ducks in a row with it and stuff. And so I'll just touch on it briefly. Something that I think you and I could talk more about as we look into it into the future, because we're talking about 2029, 2030 bull run kind of situation, right? But it's more along the lines of what you're talking about, but I'm thinking more of this DeSci, so decentralized science, right? And we're talking about the future of Jasmy and how much more it can be integrated. And I'm pulling it back to when you mentioned Biomedica and stuff like that, how they're talking about using your PDL, for example, for your medical records, right? I don't know what it is like in the States, but if you go from one doctor's office to another in Canada, it is a pain in the ass to be able to get access to your medical records. Sometimes you got to wait forever, yada, yada, yada. So we know about that already, right? That being said, I was thinking more about decentralized science, and I've mentioned it a couple times on my channel, and how you mentioned disruption, right? Jasmy and their disruption, especially when it comes to things like decentralized science. I don't know how much you've looked into DeSci at this point in time. Have you looked into it at all?
Decentralized science, yeah, I haven't covered it a lot in regards to like a deep dive on my show and so on, but I have seen more about it. There's also, what is it called, Deso? I don't know if you look more into that as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be extremely big, and I think that Jasmy's technology in terms of their PDL and their their ability with data is going to come really like securing data, so to speak. Sorry, is really going to play a bigger part in decentralized science. I think it goes kind of hand in hand, because we're talking about a lot of very, very important information. And in my opinion, decentralized science is going to be a massive niche going into the next one or two bull runs. I think it's probably where IoT was in the last bull run. It's kind of a bull run behind IoT and Jasmy, so to speak, right? And I don't want to get too deep into it. Like I said, I just kind of wanted to mention, I think it's parallel with kind of what you're talking about a little bit when it comes to the integration of the personal data locker and the ability to store and keep accurate data, which is key in this, right? I think that's going to be massive disruption when it comes to decentralized science as well.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think you're spot on with that. No, it's good that you're looking more into it. I'm glad there's other researchers looking more into it because I do think it's a big deal. Um, the other thing I'm going to pull back on this because I don't want to just be only on this particular part, but again, from the KDD, okay, and it's this right here. All right, let's just pull this up one more time and then wrap it up on this segment. This is good stuff. So you have this, and I think it's full screen. That's okay. But look what it says here. It says basically, in conclusion, the availability of high volumes of data and intelligent decision making system present both opportunities and challenges to various actors. It says, in the current research paradigm, the most important system objective of decision making systems is accuracy. Jasmy is trying their best to get that down. And I think that's why they went with this whole layer 2 AI blockchain solution. Then you see this whole thing of like the deep dive about DPIN and Junction. It's just like, okay, this all makes sense. Literally from beginning to end, it all makes sense. I love that. I think that's amazing. It says the relevance and applicability of the system is informally evaluated by the user and determines if they will continue to use the application. Yeah, maybe you don't like to see, like you don't like the experience you're getting, right? Look at this. These systems allow for enhanced informed decision-making process. The question arises to which extent the information they present is not flawed by bias and blind spots. I mean, like right now, if I use AI, maybe it's Chat GPT, maybe it's Bard, maybe it's the new one, Gemini, the same thing. There's other ones. There's bias. It's like, why is there bias in AI? It's because who writes the code? And those are centralized marketplaces, right? The Googles of the world. It says in this work, we outline how design principles based on serendipity and equity could help remediate some of these weaknesses. And so when I got into this next part, which highlights some of this stuff, they talk about this whole thing of what DSS does, the design, and so on. And they talk about how future research will need to be conducted to examine and elaborate on the process presented in order to present a realistic representation of the design, basically a serendipity. So, in conclusion, um, before I just like get too far wrapping this up, I found some key things. And I guess we lost Rob. He lost his connection or something. But we can always try to get him back. He has the link. So in conclusion, it's like this. Okay. My thing is what I gathered was the significance of all this. So this research paper is very interesting in regards to the timing of everything. The paper itself argues that incorporating serendipity. Let me just see. There he is. Welcome back.
so
Um,
sorry, buddy. My I have a massive, severe winter storm right now going on, and it knocked the power out in my entire house. So
oh, no problem. So I was just gonna wrap up this part. Welcome back, by the way. What I want to point out to you guys is the timing of all this, right? Kazumasa, or Sato-san, Kazumasa Sato. This article that was recently with him, Hagawara, and this whole thing of, for instance, KDD. So the research in this states that incorporating serendipity and equity into the design decision-making systems. Jasmy provides a design decision-making system. That's the whole point of why they're trying to bring back, empowering people with their data by allowing them to have a say, or if they want to monetize it or not. It's crucial for long-term success and user trust. Again, back to the whole thing of DFFT, data free flow with trust. Look at this for a second. Why is this significant for Jasmy? I'd be asking that. Anybody's tuned in right now, they're like, what's the Jasmy connection? Really significant. Listen to this. Traditional DSS limitations, right? Decision, what was it called again? Decision, my bad. Let me pull that up one more time. What is the definition of that real quick? Decision support systems. There we go. Okay. So traditional decision support systems do have limitations. Current systems prioritize accuracy but lack mechanisms to address potential biases, blind spots, limiting their effectiveness and potentially causing harm. Now, serendipity and equity as solutions, especially with what Jasmy is trying to do, and this introduction from Cosmos Masasato, you never talked about it before, I think is a big deal. Because for one, there's two key things I want to talk about. It will broaden information and knowledge by incorporating diverse perspectives and challenging existing assumptions. The system in itself, the decision-making system, can provide a more well-rounded picture for just that decision making. Not just saying, "Hey, we're Google, and it's our way of doing the decision making." Right? More freedom, more independence, taking decentralization to the next level instead of centralizing it with the likes of Google or GAFA. It will reduce biasness and promote fairness, and that is what Jasmy wants to accomplish. You can't promote the whole thing of data democracy if it's going to be centralized. So, by considering different viewpoints and potential power imbalances, the system itself can mitigate bias and ensure fair treatment for everybody, not just people in Japan, everybody. Now, what is the implications of Jasmy? What's the bigger picture? Hear this for a second. Jasmy's incorporation of serendipity aligns with the research findings. So this research that has been done for years aligns itself with what Jasmy is currently introducing into Japan. That's game changer. That's huge. Is that why Jasmy's pumping? I don't know, but I think it's very interesting. All the timing of all this stuff. So this suggests that Jasmy's AI platform is in fact on the right track building or towards building a more robust and trustworthy system. Again, back to DFFT, data free flow with trust, and then combining that with AI. Wow. Moving forward, Jasmy can do these three things, and then we'll kick it over to Rob. I'm so sorry if it seems like I'm dominating this. I'm not trying to do that. But it says they can focus on implementing the principles throughout the design process. This includes not only the initial design and training, but also continuous testing, evaluation with diverse user groups. What do we know in regards to the testing? WITS. With what? IoT products, the Internet of Things, right? Also looking at what's the other some of the other things, the digital twins and stuff like that. What about acknowledging some of the challenges about this? There's challenges about it. Implementing these principles in the real world design can be complex, but Jasmy should acknowledge these challenges and conduct further research to refine the approach. Kazumasa Sato and Hagawara did what? They acknowledged the challenges and they acknowledged the approach that they're going to take. Hence the article we brought to you tonight. The third thing, and I'll finally wrap it up to give it back to Rob because he needs to be able to, say some more stuff. What about advocating for interdisciplinary collaboration? Hear me out. Jasmy collaborates with many, many different ones to solve this problem of real, true decentralization, data marketplace decentralization. That paper from KDD does suggest incorporating serendipity and equity effectively requires collaboration between various disciplines. Jasmy in itself can play a role, a big, huge role in promoting this approach within the AI development community. You see them promoting it in Japan. You see what recently happened with, Harasan in Denver. It's like they're getting the word out, man. I'm so happy to talk about some of this stuff, and I obviously have more. I will close on this part. I'm sorry. This is the last particular slide. This is really good. I mean, you guys got to see this for a second, just in case you don't know about this. This is where it's going to pound at home. So here it is, right here. Let's go ahead and share this last part because we did talk about ride sharing. So just in case you're a non-believer about this stuff and you're thinking, this is just Max trying to Max is trying to make clickbait. Look at this for a second. Yeah. This guy is interesting, right? He's like, this guy's on my site. He wants to, that's centralized data. But my point is this. Regulators worldwide have proposed or adopted requirements regarding the collection, use, transfer, security, storage, and other processing of personally identified information. Think about what Jasmy accomplishes here. This is from ride sharing market, for crying out loud. Relating to individuals, these laws increase in numbers, enforcements, fines, and other penalties. Jasmy meets all this criteria by being the first to be regulatory compliant. Look what it says here. Examples of such regulations are the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, which is GDPR, enacted in 2018 in the European Union. Even California Consumer Privacy Act, which is CCPA, has this whole thing of regulation of consumer data. But this is a huge opportunity. Look what it says. The emergence of autonomous ride sharing. That's what we're talking about tonight. Autonomous vehicles are still in development stages. Many OEMs have working prototypes. Many companies competing to bring fully autonomous vehicles to the market. These include what? Lyft, like we're talking about. Uber, like we're talking about tonight. You have Toyota, Tesla, right? Waymo. I saw one earlier last week. My first time. I was trying to take a picture of it, didn't get a chance. But the point is, autonomous vehicles, right? Even here in Phoenix, they got this whole thing. So it's the challenges incorporating these factors and this whole thing we talked about in regards to ride sharing and this whole thing of serendipity. Look at this report. Just in case you think, oh, this is not going to be a big deal in North America, it's a huge deal. Look what happened from 2017 and these projections. We're now in 2024, and it keeps going up and up and up and up. The data, how much it's going to be worth. My God, it's just unbelievable. This was even back in 2020. So there's a whole outline in regards to this. And my point I'm just trying to make to you guys is recognizing that for Jasmy to be part of the tech in regards to providing a better experience for ride shares for both the driver, both the person riding along, the people collecting the data that kicks it over to what, Rob? Like, hey, I heard you might be interested in, this particular product, but I understand that you own a cat, so I'm not going to give you, ads for dog food. Oh, did you already buy the cat food? Then I won't plague you with all these stupid ads anymore. That is game changer. Jasmy to incorporate serendipity like you saw from Sato-san, and everything lined up from the research from this panel, and that is just no fly-by-night panel. I think it's huge. I'll stop talking about it. Back to you, man.
Well, to go back to what you were kind of talking about, and you're exactly right with serendipity, with partnerships and collaborations with companies like WITS. The big picture of things at the end of the day is that Jasmy's caught a lot of heat as a company because they've been slow moving, and that's the biggest argument from people who fight it, right? I don't think for 1 second, and anybody who does think so, you're fooling yourself. If you think that that this Jasmy team has not strategically laid this all out a long time ago. Every move that they've been making, all the quietness behind the scenes that's been happening over the last few years, the partnerships that may have seemed like not a big deal at the time, it's all kind of starting to come together now is what we're seeing. And this company, this team has followed through on everything that they said that they would do. It's just whether you had the patience to do it or not. For example, Hara talking about a while ago, talking about looking for VCs in the United States. The next thing you know, guys at ETH Denver talking about how he spent 4 uninterrupted hours with VCs in the United States, right? And that's just going to lead into what Dip Metaverse was talking about in his AMA, talking about how they think that 2025 is going to be just as big of a year for Jasmy as 2024 is. And I couldn't agree more. I think that going into 2025, we're probably going to see announcements in terms of venture capitalists getting involved with Jasmy as a company, Jasmy getting their foot in the door in the United States, out west here, right? All of this stuff is very strategic. Again, from their partnerships, the Aveda laptop usage. If you think that that's not going to be the standard in a lot of businesses right now, think about what happened with C19, right? How many people work from home now? How important?
I work from home. Yeah.
How important is that technology going to be to corporations who have a percentage of their employees working at home to make sure that they're maximizing the productivity of their employees who are working, whether they're at home or whether they're hiring people who work in other countries, for crying out loud, can work for them, and they can keep track of their data. They can keep it secure. They can make sure the productivity is up to par. We don't have to worry about false reporting in terms of how many hours you're putting in a day. All that stuff, while it might seem mundane to us, matters bigly to these companies, right? Every dollar matters. That's why they are multi-billion-dollar companies in the first place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just it's nice to see. I mean, for to see Hara even here anywhere in the United States, I thought was huge. And
And
those
remember when
pictures.
people thought he didn't exist?
Yeah, I remember that. They're like, "Oh, he's just an AI," and I'm like, "Come on." Um, it is what it is. I know some of our own guys believe that. It's okay. It's a difference of opinion. Um, one thing I did want to show. This is the bottom. I think it shows a picture of both of these guys. Let's just share this real quick. So this again was from NeoXtrix. This is the very bottom from the report from open-dx.lab.itoki.jp. I know it's a mouthful, but what you see here, and let me just come back in the frame, is this. Look at this for a second. So it says this proposal encounters to take this one step further. The role that data and expected to play. It says, however, while centralized, data management is excellent at supporting people. It's difficult to take safe and smart actions that are one step ahead of what humans can do. That just sounds crazy in itself. But look at this. This guy, Itoki Azawa, I guess is the guy that did the interview with Hagawara and Sato-san. He says that he even feels as though that Jasmy is seriously addressing these issues and aiming for a future where everyone, yes, everyone can use data easily and with peace of mind. He's currently developing a system to securely manage university students' learning history, to use it effectively in grading. And why would he mention this? Think about it for a second. I don't know if you ever saw some of the research I've done or some of the other guys and so on. Remember, Kazumasa Sato had this thing called Giga School concept. So he is a huge proponent of education in the metaverse. And so I think the next step from here, I'm just going to call it, Rob. You see the ducks in a row, right? Like they're literally lining up all the ducks, like everything from the white paper now, like literally coming true, scaling up with this layer two, the storage solution, you name it. We even seen this whole thing about DPEN, which is massive, right? For Jasmy to be part of anything DPIN is huge. DEPIN, if you guys don't know about it. But I honestly think the next step forward from this, based on, if we're gonna have like a little roadmap of like, all right, they did this, they did that. What's the next step? I honestly think it's going to be taking education to the next level. Why would I say that? Again, back to the conversation with Mr. Chan addressing, from Hong Kong, investing into all this research and development, especially with universities. Understanding that Kazumasa Sato is a huge proponent of education. I think Jasmy is going to be at the forefront for education, especially when it comes to Japan and into the metaverse. I know sometimes we mention the metaverse, people get bored of it. They're like, there's nothing really going on. There's a lot going on. You have to look at the metaverse from the perspective of kind of like when you drive down the street in your local area, depending on where you're at, and you see the development of something going on. You're like, wow, there's a whole building being built, or there's this whole, all this construction going on. What's being built? Look at the metaverse in that same perspective. Look at it from the perspective of there's not a lot of people there. But what do we know? The 80s and 90s, physical malls are becoming ghost towns. Virtual malls are about to be filled up. Back to you, my friend.
Yeah, sorry, you're kind of skipping on me there, but I don't know if it's your internet or mine. But
My
anyway,
internet looks like
um,
it's okay. I get that little connection meter on StreamYard. I understand you got storms going on, buddy, so I'll give you the benefit of that.
it's probably me. Yeah, I would agree with you there that, and what I would say to anybody listening is that, like you were just kind of touching on, just because you don't actually see something happening, or you don't, doesn't necessarily mean that like this stuff's not just going to go away, guys. Right? metaverse and all that stuff. We're just getting started. Make no mistake about it. This is not a that's such a last market cycle thing. It's not going to be big this time around. It's going to be way bigger, guys. Make no mistake about it. It's not going anywhere. Again, if you had conviction in this kind of thing to begin with, I would stay true to it. In my opinion, I was just watching again YouTube earlier today, and there was another channel that just popped up, as you're driving or whatever, and it was a very, very large channel, right? I'm not going to name it or anything, but it was a very large channel, and to my surprise, the first thing he started talking about was, guess what? IoT and DPIN and the metaverse, and how it was going to be so big going into the next 2 market cycles, right? These big influencers and stuff, they're just starting to dip into this stuff now because it wasn't mainstream before, right? So I say that just to give you an idea of how early you got in, if you've been in for a while now, and just, don't just dip your toes in, man. Do your research, start looking into it. It's not going anywhere, right? Absolutely, I agree with you, Max.